Curious about vegetables? Talk to Isvesid. Hello everyone, welcome to Around the VegTable. So I'm Lysette Lacambra and your host for this program. In today's episode, we are joined by Dr. Peter Croman, who will share the project on Farm of the Future. A brief introduction of Dr. Peter. Dr. Peter is an experienced plant pathologist, agronomist, and potato expert with over 20 years of dedicated service in agricultural research and development. His work has spanned various aspects of tropical and temperate agri-food systems, encompassing stakeholder management, crop production, integrated pest and disease management, seed systems, and the intricate dynamics of soil-water-plant relations. So currently, Dr. Croman serves as an integrated pest management expert in horticultural systems research, where he is deeply committed to fostering knowledge exchange and capacity building across Africa and Asia. With a focus on sustainable production systems, he has recently contributed to transformative projects in Jordan, Ethiopia, and across sub-Saharan Africa. Within the Field Crops Business Unit at Wageningen University and Research, Dr. Croman drives forward innovative research and development initiatives aimed at advancing sustainable agriculture. So, without further delay, hello, Dr. Croman. Welcome, Peter. Thank you for accepting our request to share this project on Farm of the Future. I'm really excited to know more about this project in the Netherlands. And now I'm giving the virtual floor to you.
Thank you very much, Lysette. And thank you for the invitation and opportunity to share our experience with this project, the Farm of the Future, with so many people from all over the globe almost. So good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I will go through this hopefully within half an hour, and then we will have time for questions and some interaction after my presentation about how you maybe could use some of this input from our project, which is in the Netherlands. It's a project for sustainable transition of vegetable production and how we do that applied research approach in the Netherlands. So to just let you know where I am working, I'm working for Wageningen University and Research, and actually in the Wageningen Research Institute, where we do food science research and applied research with the sector. And this we do mainly in the Netherlands, but also for partners and in projects all over the world. And I'm mainly engaged in projects in the tropics, as Lysette mentioned. And our Farm of the Future is by the town of Lelystad in the center of the Netherlands. Then going to the project, I will tell you why was the Farm of the Future developed, what is the Farm of the Future, and how did the Farm of the Future develop, and also who is involved. By doing this, I hope you can get some input to how applied research and development can be done. And this is with an aim of accelerating the process of ensuring a sustainable future for everyone and looking at the urgency of doing that as fast as possible. So before I go into my further presentation, I would like to ask you a question. So according to you, what should be the main driver behind agricultural development in your geographical area? And then you can select one of these options. Or you can also say all of the above. But is it about increasing food production, enhancing food quality, addressing sustainability challenges? This is about pollution, emissions, climate mitigation, conserving biodiversity. And or is it about enhancing the economic benefit for participants across the value chain? Sort of mainly farmers, intermediaries, vendors, processors, and other stakeholders. What do you think is the main driver should be the main driver behind agricultural development? So we see, all of above are important. I absolutely agree. But we have to be aware when we do agricultural development that there may be different perspectives and looking at what we need to do. And this also depends on what type of food system you are working with. If we have a very developed food system, as we have here in Europe, it becomes also a political decision about where should we go and what one can say which of these four aspects is most important. And there can be different opinions about that. Some are, in one way, they are not always aligned and synergetic. They could also be some, in a sense, counterproductive, let's say. Let's see if I can move this and go on. So taking this into consideration, then, why the Farm of the Future project? So this is related to a sense of urgency in changing our food production and food system that we have in the Netherlands and mainly in the European Union. And this is related to also that changing context of food production, where we have some crises that are very pertinent and very dramatic and changing our ability to produce food, one can say, continue sustainable living on our planet. This is related to the biodiversity collapse. We are losing a lot of species very fast at the moment. We also have serious issues with climate change, and these are the main drivers for our change in agricultural systems in the Netherlands. Also related very much to soil degradation and emissions from artificial or chemical fertilizer, or let's say any fertilizer applied. So having nitrogen or phosphorus emissions into the environment is also major issues for agriculture in the Netherlands, where nature is very much affected, particularly by nitrogen, but also phosphorus emissions into the environment. But also looking at more on-farm problems that the farmers see in the Netherlands, and they are very concerned about. Farmers in the Netherlands are particularly constrained by issues of soil compaction, losing soil fertility due to several issues, but one main factor is using very large machinery, which causes heavy compaction of the soil and thereby creating an infertile soil. Then we also have very pertinent and obvious changes in our climate and climate systems, having more extreme weather events such as flooding and drought also in the summertime. These issues are complicating very much farmers' work, plant growth, particularly also the planting and harvesting of the crops. And then we also have an issue where farmers also realize they're getting more and more problem managing pests and diseases, and also related to issues of intoxications and environmental impact of pesticides in the environment. So these are some of the challenges that farmers see and which we are finding some solutions for. Then we look at what is the Farm of the Future? What is this project? So it's an initiative that is in the Netherlands, but it is also very much locally based so that we find solutions that are sustainable locally, finding local solutions for a local area in the main potato and vegetable growing area in the Netherlands. It's about working to design a new farming system and integrate new management in a way, not just substituting some practice with another practice, for example, substituting one pesticide for a more sustainable pesticide or changing one type of fertilizer to another type of fertilizer, but looking at how can we change the entire system of production, looking more into agroecological principles. And the Farm of the Future, we consider that we have four components: stakeholder platform, an innovation platform, a field lab, or a demonstration field or a lighthouse farm showing the practices in the field. So combining many different practices that we see as solutions and demonstrating them together in the same field. And then we also have a fourth component where this field lab combined with the stakeholder platform, we also have that now in other locally developed field labs and stakeholder platforms in other parts of the country. So we have a network of farms of the future. This is very much about having a stakeholder platform where we can come together, discuss solutions with all stakeholders that are interested. These are particularly farmers. We are centered around finding solutions for farmers and also here looking for solutions for, let's say, mainstream agriculture. So we are not particularly looking at organic farming or ecological farming or some type of niche production, but looking at how can mainstream farming be transitioned into something which is more sustainable and valid for farmers. And this is also within a time frame of something that becomes very relevant for farmers. So we look mainly at a horizon of 5 years. So solutions that have a longer perspective than the 5 years, we do not implement in our field lab. The stakeholder platform is a very important part to have discussions, workshops, and iterations with farmers and other stakeholders, companies, supermarkets, processors about how we can change our farming system, listening to them and also considering their feedback for redesigning our approach. And so the goals we have is related to improving the socioeconomic position of farmers. This is key. This is something that we are developing for the main stakeholders in the value chain, the farmers, and then also looking very much at restoration and maintenance of natural resources, soil and water, having a resilient cultivation system that is almost without pesticides and synthetic fertilizer. So we do, as a last solution, if other options are not working, we do consider the use of pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. But this is in an approach where we look to reduce it as much as possible. And this is in the sense that our approach is what we call in the Netherlands related to our having circular agriculture. So input streams should feed back into the same system. So inputs, water, fertilizer, energy, it should all be as much as possible used in the value chain, but then also having a feedback loop and return into our production system. This is related to particularly nitrogen and phosphorus streams, but we're also looking at being energy neutral and having energy production. And this is by using on our farm, having solar energy panels and also having wind turbines for producing wind energy, and also being connected to nature and restoring biodiversity is a major objective from the Ministry of Agriculture, from the political system in the Netherlands, to make our farming systems and agriculture more nature inclusive, working with nature and not against nature, and preserving biodiversity. And then also having our obligations internationally to look at climate mitigation and also very much about climate adaptation to the changing weather systems that we have in the Netherlands. So there I have another checkpoint and question for you. This is about a farm of the future. If you consider either the one we are doing here, or if you could imagine that where you are working, if you had a similar project and wanted to develop a lighthouse farm or a farm of the future, what, according to you, which of the following 5 components are the most important? The stakeholder platform, the innovation platform, the field lab, having a national network of farms of the future, or maybe financing the project? I think here we can prioritize some as being more important than others. So I didn't put in the option of all of the above. I thought I should include this with financing the project, because most initiatives or projects are hard to develop if you don't have finance for it. But if you have a really good project as this one, then it's not a major problem to find finances. So that's maybe a bit ambitious to say, but let's consider the other components that I say are the 4 components within our farm of the future. And there I'm surprised you say that the field lab is less important. Maybe if I should give my opinion about this and the experience I've had with developing these types of projects, then I would say that the main component and the most important is the stakeholder platform. The idea of having co-development, having stakeholder feedback and iteration about our innovation process, further development of any technology and innovation. It's about having feedback and co-development of innovations with stakeholders, and having a strong communication. So this is good that this is the one with the highest percentage. But then I would also say what I would like to stimulate also is that a field lab is actually also very important. You have to show. It's difficult to get people really involved and excited about something which is only on paper or they do not see in a combined way. Otherwise, it becomes an evaluation of individual innovations and practices that are not demonstrated in combination. So we are very much believers of believing by doing and by seeing. Particularly this, that stakeholders believe that these practices are valuable because they've seen it in the field somewhere where it's working. So I would stimulate to having your demo farms and your innovation farms is absolutely key for horticultural, agricultural development.
So there's a question from the Facebook live stream. If it's okay with you, you can answer.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yes.
is it possible to do organic farming without the synthetic pesticide and fertilizers?
Organic farming is producing without synthetic chemicals and pesticides. So that is exactly what it is. Maybe the question is if you can feed the world with organic production or the same value chain that you've been producing to. We do consider in the Netherlands under our production forms that yields will drastically go down if we next year we're not allowed to use synthetic input. But you can definitely produce organic farming. That is very viable, and they do that in many places.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Then going to how did our project develop, this farm of the future we have in the Netherlands? A project that was developed on the basis of agri-ecological principles, looking at how they can be supported now and in the near future by technology, and then also through an extensive this multi-stakeholder consultation, but particularly looking at how can agri-ecological principles, agri-ecological building blocks be better integrated, implemented, and used on farm by combining agri-ecological principle and the support of these principles by technologies such as precision farming, having artificial intelligent systems for decision making, and having robotics for more precise automated machinery implementation. But these issues about the technology, this is in the context of the Netherlands. One could consider you could also easily have a farm of the future without being so focused on, let's say, high-tech technology for precision farming. This is generally because of the large monocultural systems we have in the Netherlands. We have moved very far away from precision farming. We used to be doing it very precise by hand, treating every plant by individual precise nurturing and management, to using these very large machines that with one person and one machine looking at hundreds and thousands of plants within an hour. So we move so far away from precision farming with manual labor that we are now looking at how can we do that better with other types of machinery than what we actually use today. The only reason we went into the monoculture is basically because of saving labor and man hour, about being able to produce as many plants as possible per person or per man hours put into the system. There's no agri-ecological or agricultural principle behind monoculture or large-scale monoculture. It's about being able to treat as many plants as possible as fast as possible. So now we want to see how we can do that more precise with better technology. Then just to mention that we are also looking at principles of what we call nature-inclusive agriculture. So this is very much about including nature in our farms and promoting nature around and within our farms. And this is also for serving biodiversity, avoiding collapse of ecosystem services, but also looking at potentially other income streams within horticulture and agriculture. An agricultural area is not only about producing plant produce, it's also about finding other income streams, which, for example, could be tourism is a major aspect, but also social, cultural aspects and health or society services in a landscape that is more agreeable and attractive to population. And here in the Netherlands, we have a huge urban population that would also like to have recreational opportunities in other areas and also in agricultural areas. So these principles are also within our farm of the future. Then we also have principles of regenerative agriculture. This is very much also what we are focused on, of having a healthy crop rotation system, having cover crops, integrating animal manure into the nutrient stream. So we deliver to animal farms which use our produce as feed, and then we have a return of manure to our farm. Also looking at how we can potentially have reduced tilling systems and these types of aspects for conserving and maintaining good soil fertility and soil health. And as mentioned, also very much focused on the advanced technology to have precision farming. And this is about robotics, automated machinery, self-driving machinery. But what we are most focused on is actually what you see on the lower picture to the left, the tractor that has some special belts for instead of wheels, and is used for what we call controlled traffic farming. So instead of having huge tractors moving in randomly across the field and compacting the soil many different places, with controlled traffic farming, we maintain the tractor moving in the same tracks over the field when it operates. So it doesn't move randomly around, but it always follows the same tracks. So the compaction of the soil is maintained to these same tracks, and we thereby conserve better soil fertility in other parts of the field that are not compacted. Then also very much a system of looking into decision support systems and different applications for decision related to geographical mapping, GPS systems. And this is for pesticide applications, for fertilizer applications, for variable rate applications, and for many other farm decisions on farm that now in the Netherlands is being automated in many different aspects of the farming. And this is also having transparency and having monitoring across the value chain, so we can see how one bag of potatoes, for example, has been produced all the through production of the seeds to the farm and in the processing with different stakeholders before it goes to the supermarket. But then when we have a farm of the future, it's also very important to manage the expectations of our different stakeholders and having clear set goals of what we are aiming to achieve, and also hopefully within a set time frame. And here I can mention some of these main goals we're looking at. So having minimal nutrient losses and looking at nitrogen use efficiency is something that we are very focused on, using animal manure and nitrogen fixing crops and more efficient nitrogen fertilizers and applications to reach a nitrogen use efficiency of 75%, which is rather ambitious, but we are getting there. And also we have a clear goal of increasing biodiversity by a factor of 4, and also looking at having a production that is as the same level of production we have today. So we're not particularly aiming at increasing production per area, but looking at maintaining production with a lower input and with circular farming principles. And then another major aspect that I should mention, so this is also very much about being able to produce within an efficient economic efficiency, which is not increased extremely. So this is also related to the question that was posed before, if organic farming can be done. So organic farming can always be done. But can you maintain the production level of a current or a conventional production system if you start being organic? So normally that you always, not always, but you often have reduction in yields when you do not use synthetic inputs. And so we are here looking at a goal of having maximum 20% increase of labor costs. And this should then also be reflected in farmer income. So we can maximum have an increase of cost of production of 20%, but this should not affect farmer income. So it's also about changing our value chains and our products that we produce, and producing maybe more high value crops and delivering to more added value processing and markets that pay a higher price. So instead of focusing only on yield, we are focusing on farmer income, the output in euros and not in kilos. So who is involved in the farm of the future? Here I will just say that this can be or should be everyone who has an interest and who is of importance for the farm of the future. So we try to be very inclusive in our local area, particularly. Anyone who would like to participate is invited to our workshops and our meetings. All our results are published publicly, and we hope to have input from as many stakeholders as possible. So we have within the 4 components of the Farm of the Future, we have teams being involved. Yeah, maybe I didn't mention what I mean about our innovation platform. The innovation platform is basically our applied research stations and our Knowledge Institute network, where we have access to development and innovation of new technologies in agriculture. And these, from the whole base of Wageningen University and research and new innovations that are developed in the Netherlands and elsewhere, we apply or adapt to our local context and then see if these innovations are valid. And then from a selection process in our stakeholder evaluations, certain technologies are selected and then demonstrated and implemented in our field lab, which is basically a 25-hectare vegetable field where we implement these technologies. Just to show that we have many companies and also local governments and the EU involved in the financing of our project. And then another important aspect of our field lab and our stakeholder platform is that you can have many startups, new companies developing solutions for agriculture at many different levels, but they often are not in good connection with the farming community. And therefore, when they say they have a solution which is good for producing vegetables, they only tried it one place and not with experts and not with farmers. And it often happens when a startup says they have an amazing new solution for in any type of agricultural technology. When you actually put it in the field with farmers, it's not as spectacular as they thought. So there's a process of adaptation of the technology, which then, for example, our Farm of the Future can help with. So we have technology development with local and international companies and trying out new technologies in our field. Here, for example, we have an automated self-driving tractor. It's a small tractor that drives by itself and then implement different machinery treatments to our plots in the field. And our field lab is this 25-hectare field where we do strip cropping of our 8 crops that we have in an 8-year rotation scheme, growing different main vegetables, which are the main cash crops for farmers in our area here in Flevoland in the Netherlands. Farmers are particularly interested in growing potato and onion, for example, as high value crops. Some farmers grow potato in very tight rotation schemes, and here we are looking at having an 8-year rotation. That was initially our approach, but farmers insisted they wanted to have potato in the system twice. So we have an early potato and a late potato. And by having early harvested potatoes, you actually then also reduce the amount of time that you have the crop in the field, and the time for accumulation of pests and diseases in the soil from that crop is shorter in the early potato crop than in the late potato crop. So this is one of the reasons that we have early potato in the system. Then we also have carrot, which is also a good commercial crop. And fava bean is also becoming more valuable. But the grass clover and the winter wheat and winter barley are crops that are commercial, but mainly there for maintaining a healthy rotation for the more high-value crops. But then we also have service crops, cover crops, green manure crops, and we do our best to maintain plants in the soil all year round for as long as possible. So as soon as we have harvested commercial crop, we will soon thereafter plant a cover crop to give services to the soil until we plant a new commercial crop in the spring. So we typically have these mixtures of cover crops in the wintertime in the Netherlands, and then we grow the vegetables in the summertime. Here a picture of our strip cropping. Yeah, I think these are the tractors of the controlled traffic farming, which is something farmers also very much interested in and can see the clear benefit of a more healthy soil by not having compaction with the huge tractors. So controlled traffic farming is something that farmers are very interested in the Netherlands. Here are some, the agri-ecological building blocks that we have researchers working with. And also to mention that we also look into agroforestry systems, having, for example, production of nuts, hazelnuts, walnuts among our vegetable fields. And particularly in our area, it's about creating windbreaks, but also very much for sequestering carbon into the soil and having better water management. So one can then think of, you could also do a farm of the future in other areas, and maybe looking at our approach of having a stakeholder platform, a field lab, and looking at implementing new innovations together for co-development. But if one looks at a track for a farm of the future, how would you have? You would also start with a simple demo field and showing just one or two new innovations. One can also call that a farm of the future at a different scale. But before you want to show some new innovations, it's also about making sure that all the other agricultural practices that should be implemented for the production of a certain vegetable is also implemented in the right way. Hereby, I mean that many farmers are actually not applying, for example, the fertilizer at the right rate, at the right time, at the right place, or applying fungicides when they should be applying insecticides. So these more basic good agricultural practices should be in place before we start developing more sophisticated innovations and going into principles of agroecology, I think. These are some of the tracks that one can go into for a farm of the future. It's about having good agricultural practices with making sure the irrigation, the fertilization, the crop protection, variety selection is well in place and well managed before you think about maybe implementing some more agroecologically based solutions and thinking about landscape management. And also always be aware that farmers will be very much focused on the economic sustainability. If the economic sustainability is not there, there's not a good business model for them to make a living. I would assume they are less likely to be interested in environmental or social sustainability. So be aware of these issues. Any new technology should be economically viable for the main stakeholder, the farmer in the field. I hope there will be some questions from you about this approach we also use here in the Netherlands. But my question here is, according to you, which of the following agroecological building blocks are most important to enhance in your geographical area? So which of these following agroecological building blocks or principles of farming are most interesting for you to enhance in your local area where you're working? A is green manure and cover crops. B, smart crop protection IPM. C, strip cropping. D, landscape elements for biodiversity. This is conserving beneficials such as pollinators, natural enemies, birds, and any other animals on the farm. And E, robust varieties. And here I mean the varieties that are resilient to abiotic and biotic stress factors, so disease and drought resistant, for example, or if healthy rotation and cropping plan. And I would definitely say that having some resilient varieties that are resistant to drought, to heat, to salinity, to different pests and diseases, this is also a very important part. But this most likely depends on which area you're working. So interesting to see, but these are some of the elements that could be tested in a farm of the future project, wherever you would like to do that. So thank you very much for your attention. And then I will go to see if there's any questions. I'll be happy to hear some comments, questions, and I hope this has some inspiration for you to see how farming, applied research, and transition into more sustainable agriculture is happening in the Netherlands.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peter. Very insightful presentation, actually. It's inspiring to see what's happening in the Netherlands on how you're being innovative and also bringing more on the aspect of, I like the idea of the nature inclusive agriculture. We're trying to also make sure to put that in our activities. We have so much things to do, actually, and to partner with. I think we have some questions. First, maybe from Sylvie. So, do farmers in the Netherlands grow crops using Farmers of the Future, or how many? Do you have already data on their results, or is it only on the research farm at the moment?
So our farms of the future are research farms mainly. The one we have here is at our research station, but there are several new initiatives and also some already ongoing on farmers' fields run by farmers or farmers associations. So it's also an approach that is popular by practitioners, by farmers, and they are now also taking on this approach and running farms of the future. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Any data? Do you know if there are data that's present? I think basically more on the economic side, because you've also mentioned a lot on the importance of having that economic sustainability, a good business case for these farmers.
Yes, so we do have data from our own farm, and we also a lot of or the other farms are also publishing their data, some at more detail. And I could mention what we have from our farm is we, for example, are very happy with our nitrogen use efficiency, which is now above 60%, 70%. We have a reduction in the use of pesticides by more than 50%. We are not using any of what we have here in the EU called candidates of substitution. So that means pesticides that are suspected of having high environmental or health impacts. We are not using. Our phosphorus use efficiency has also increased significantly. Also water use. But the costs, we are struggling to maintain it with not more than 20% increase in the use of labor. And this is a major concern for agricultural production in the Netherlands. The labor costs are the main cost factor for making agriculture economically efficient. And so we are still struggling with this, but that is also related to the fact that the machinery is still in research stages. So it's not fully developed. It's not at what one would expect in the future, a reduced cost of this type of machinery when you have more large-scale implementation of many users. So use by scale would reduce costs in the future. But we are also, it is very likely that we will have to compromise the use of very small strips for farmers in the Netherlands to have a strip of 3 meters, and thereby having machinery for that small area is very small and not viable by many, from the view of many farmers. So we may have to compromise and will use larger strips, or maybe not even the strip farming in the future. That depends.
Thanks for that, Peter. You mentioned that one major constraint at the moment is the labor cost or the manpower in the Netherlands. I'm also very interested to know your thoughts about in the context of the tropics. what could be the main constraint if we bring this farmer of the future to the tropics? You've worked in the African countries as well. Do you think there's a main constraint in implementing this farm of the future in the tropics?
No, I think it's the approach is very much about creating a community of practice or a platform for communication, and having or a platform for knowledge sharing, demonstrating that farming can be done more sustainably. So the agroecological farming practices, I think, are very valuable in low-intensive systems. If farmers do not have much access to fertilizer, the amounts of fertilizer are limited, or the types of fertilizer are limited, then the use of green manure crops, cover crops, reduced tillage, or having planting in raised beds or other agroecological principles are very valid for water and nutrient management. So these can farms of the future in a sub-Saharan African context could be about showcasing the best options for cover crops, green manure, intercropping, and planting times, harvesting times, and also the good agricultural practices for water nutrient management.
I think
it doesn't have to be focused on these high-tech technologies. It's about demonstrating and showing to farmers, stakeholders, the vendors, consumers, that agriculture, horticulture can produce more sustainably and with less pesticides.
I think back to what we mentioned, I think Herman also mentioned about it, like it's not a fixed system, but a set of ideas and that are shared at the platform or field lab. And it's up to the farmers to choose what fit their farms. So I think it's more of a contextual recommendations or techniques that works best in the field of the farmers. I'm not sure if that also relates to what Palm asked here. Do you have any recommendations for the small-scale farmers? How can small-scale farmers access resources and adapt more effectively?
Yeah, so one can also say that having a Farm of the Future project like this, it's about being engaged with other stakeholders. There could also be ministries, NGOs, knowledge institutes that are interested in changing agricultural practices. And by having a project like this, you may get some financing to training and some action research of what can be changed. But it's also looking at what practices can you implement in the field. I think you at East West, you have some excellent demo farms and your field farms that where you can show new practices. This is also a field lab. Where if you looking at changing practices, not just demonstrating the same thing over and over again, but continuously trying to adapt and optimize your practices. This is a field lab, so you're learning by doing. Yeah. And this is also my thinking was that this type of approach can push you and help you in this direction, and showing you that we do the same here in the Netherlands. It's about finding solutions locally. It's not a silver bullet technology, that will solve all problems and can do that everywhere. It's about finding locally a combination of practices and innovations that can be integrated, and thereby giving the best optimal, let's say, economic solution locally, according to what is available, how costly it is, and our ability or our skills to implement it. And this changes from area to area. And therefore, also we have here in the Netherlands, our Farm of the Future, it's The one I showcased here today is from our experimental station in one province of the Netherlands. We have others in other areas, other types of production, for other crops, which are different. If you want a different soil with a different environment, different stakeholders, then the solution there is most likely different.
Yeah, it differs per area, per location, and what struck me the most is that when you mentioned that the most important aspect, or from the first poll that you mentioned, is the stakeholder. I think what usually it's not happening in projects, but when you bring different stakeholder, especially farmers, in the decision, or making a decision for themselves, I think that works much better. And also in connection to what we're doing at the moment, so we're looking at a field decision tool for especially for Katie, that it helps us really look at what available resources that farmers can use, or what are the available resources that our staff can recommend to farmers, and not really focus on just one package of technology that maybe not really maximizing, especially on the economic side, on the economic aspect that you mentioned. So it needs to be what you mentioned here is economic viability of the technology that you're presenting to farmers. It's very good inspiration from your presentation. I don't see any questions in here, Peter. There are comments from Herman, great comments from Herman. Thank you very much, Herman, for also adding that in the chat box. If anyone who has question, you're also welcome to turn on your audio and say or share your thoughts, maybe your experiences or questions more to Peter. Anyone from our participants? I hope that this presentation from Peter inspires you to see as well how it works, or how it fits in your own context. I think we already mentioned a lot, and it should be contextual, fits in what the situation of the farmers. Very inspiring presentation, as our participants mentioned. Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you also for to all our participants who stayed with us until the end of this presentation. If there are no questions, then thank you again, Peter, Dr. Peter Croman, for sharing us the Farm of the Future project in the Netherlands. So that's the end of our presentation, or our episode. Do you have any questions you would like to be answered in the future episodes, or topics that you would like to learn more about? Leave your questions or suggestions in the comment section, or contact our technical support hub members in your country. Stay tuned for the next episode of Around the VegTable. Curious about vegetables? Talk to Isvesit. Bye. Thank you, everyone.